Welcome, everybody. My name is Manoj Ramnani. I'm the founder and CEO of SalesIntel, where we provide signal to pipeline. Our goal is to make sure we give you all the signals, all the intelligence, all the data that you need to build the pipeline. Today, I am excited to share this virtual stage with my friend Mike Burton, the co-founder of Bombora and the pioneer of intent. Mike, why don't you introduce yourself
Yeah,
and Bombora to the audience?
yeah. Thanks, Manoj. Psyched to be here. And hey, everybody, thanks for joining. Excited to chat today, share some ideas. Mike Burton, I'm a co-founder at Bombora, and I lead our strategic partnerships. So we're in the most people know us as a big player in the B2B intent data space. We also have a large digital audiences business that powers a lot of ABM and B2B advertising across the advertising ecosystem, and I lead partnerships across both those parts of our business.
That's great. Thanks, Mike. Today, I'm excited to dive deeper into two big topics that are top of mind for go-to-market leaders. One is efficient growth, and second is AI and how to leverage this AI to get the efficient growth. As part of that, we are going to dive deeper into the foundational elements of AI and efficient growth, which is quality data, importance of ICP analysis and ensuring that you know your ICP well and all things signals, right? And different type of intents. And finally, we will leave the audience with some proven recipes that we are seeing other go-to-market leaders have used and finding success, right? So let's dive deeper into AI. AI is no longer the hype in GTM, right? Every leader is thinking about it. Some leaders are putting AI in practice, others are thinking about it. Mike, what are you seeing when it comes to AI and the go-to-market?
Yeah. Well, definitely, you've got like this mix of adoption and maturation, different size companies. Like in a lot of ways, some of the smaller companies that we cross paths with are maybe even moving a little bit faster, in the sense that they can be more nimble, adopt tools faster that are helping them, automate tasks. Larger companies, we're seeing a little more red tape, in terms of like, systematically bringing these tools into their stack in a way that'll scale across their entire teams. So yeah, it's a mix, but certainly, and I know we'll talk a lot more about this as we go, more of a premium on quality data, in that, we're getting to what we all asked for, which was just tell me what to do. Just give me a prescription. I can't analyze all of these different data points or expect my SDRs or other stakeholders to analyze and make decisions off of a bunch of different data points. So now we're getting closer to prescription. But with that comes a lot more stakes that the inputs and that the data that are flowing into those prescriptions is of high quality and that it's not sending agents or and then ultimately our frontline people in the wrong direction. So it's an interesting time. It feels like we're kind of in a muddy middle of adoption and
Yeah.
also in trying to feel out, the risks of, just relying on the synthesis that's now at our fingertips.
Right, right. I couldn't agree with you, Mike. AI is only as good as the data and the context that you provide to AI. In terms of the use cases, are there certain use cases that you're seeing more? Like we see, BDRs adopting, for the BDR role, adoption of AI, where you can now reach, very efficiently. You see account executives there, the key function is account research, right? The AI can do most of the research for you. What are some of the use cases where you are seeing AI being successful?
Yeah, we see it everywhere, of course, across, for better or worse, our data gets used across all the full funnel, sales tech, martech, ad tech, lots of use cases, lots of constituencies. So we see it everywhere. Sometimes it's kind of more behind the scenes and it helps use cases come to life faster, easier. So I'll give you an example. In our digital audience business, our ability to take in an RFP or a brief, right? So ultimately, an advertiser is going to say, hey, here's the types of companies that I want to reach, the types of job titles I want to reach. our ability to get from that brief to a created audience and a delivered audience to an ad tech platform has gotten 10 times faster. So this is
Wow.
just an example of a customer might not say, "Oh, wow, I worked with an agent to get an advertising campaign live." They wouldn't say that, but
Yeah.
our ability to get them to a point where their advertising campaign was ready to run is much, much faster, as an example.
Yeah.
I think another big one that you mentioned is account research. Like anything that kind of like consolidates all of the information on the internet about an account entity, that's going to be faster now. You don't have to grab news information from one source, information about executive changes from another source. Like that consolidation's happening particularly fast. So those are two examples, but there's no use case where it's like, oh yeah, AI doesn't apply to that. It's like
Yeah.
it's everywhere. It's just a matter of, how customer facing it is and how quickly it'll emerge.
Yeah, yeah. So I was at the Pavilion conference last 2 days, and similar discussions around AI. And the majority of revenue leaders, they are all agreeing to this notion of any task that you have today that you're doing manually or is inefficient, see if AI can do it first for you, right? And if AI can do it for you, then the next question is how much do you automate? Do you automate all the way, or do you keep the human in the loop, right? And we believe that you keep the human still in the loop. Human now becomes 3, 4, 5, 10x more productive because AI is doing the work for them. But at the end of the day, human is still reviewing what's going out to the customer. Human is still important for the interaction with the end customer.
Yeah, I think that's certainly the responsible way. Have you started to see, more of a proliferation of like automated emails, automated SDR outreach that is maybe like, you know, less human in the loopy?
Yeah, and that is just gonna, make the situation worse, right? We talk about go-to-market leaders have efficient growth in mind, right? Which means you reduce your CAC. Now, how do you
Yeah.
reduce your CAC when you have so much noise in the market? So, I like your term of responsible AI to make sure that we are leveraging it for its advantage and not making it, our enemy here.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. 'Cause I think if you asked us 2 or 3 years ago, before this was so top of mind, if we had too much noise in the system, we would have said yes.
yeah,
So this, it definitely gives an opportunity for more proliferation of that noise, and it'll make, efficient go-to-market, good data even more important, because, the easier it is to do communications, the more noise there will be in the system.
yeah, exactly. And if you don't feed the right data, the quality data, and the quality context, it's just going to get noisy, and you hurt your reputation, the brand reputation. Imagine emails going out to the customers, and the context is not given to AI. Right? Cool. So let's switch the gear. The part of efficient growth is to make sure that you're targeting your customers, right? Gone are the days where you have so much of money available, you're hiring more BDRs, more AEs, and nobody's asking you questions about what is your LTV to CAC ratio, right? What is your sales efficiency? Now, every board meeting, is structured around, the focus is on efficient growth. So the focus on defining your ICP becomes that much more important, right? What are you seeing in your customer base as how are they using the data and the AI to define their ideal customer profile?
Yeah, I'd say there's a significant increase in the amount of intent data that's getting layered against a current book of business for our customers. So a lot more of like churn reduction use cases, a lot more cross-sell, upsell use cases. How do I grow more and retain more from the customers I already have versus this much, much more inefficient, growth lever of just finding the brand new customer. Of course, that's still like, king in a lot of ways, and kind of like bread and butter use case for intent data in particular is to find a brand new customer. But I'd say like over the last couple of years, we've seen a doubling of just like first use case out of the gate is more about how I get more out of the base I already have, which is not a revolutionary idea. It's just it maps to this macro theme that you're getting at, which is efficient growth. And of course, much, much less expensive to get more revenue from a customer you already have or to save a customer you already have than to, fight tooth and nail to get a brand new customer.
Yeah. The saying of um, your ideal customer profile. First, look at your current customer base, right? Make sure they are happy, and is this what they say 5 times easier to expand in current account versus go find a new account. You touched on intent signals. There's variety of intent signals out there. Primarily, the market uses intent signal for expansion, going into new market, finding the new prospects, right? Unpack for me different type of signals that you're seeing or different type of intents that you're seeing in the market, as well as the use cases of it in both existing
Yeah.
customer expansion and the new customer acquisition.
Yeah, Mike, really high level is always start with first party and third party.
Yeah.
So first party intents, like anything that's kind of behavioral events that are created with your owned and operated property. So that could be, activities against emails that you're sending. It could be activities that salespeople are generating in CRM, certainly website visits and mapping that back to accounts. So first party intent's really important. And then you've got the third party intent data, which is all of the accounts that you've either already captured or that you want to be your customer, and all of the behavioral and research activities that are taking place outside of your owned and operated properties. And then, that's the space that we play in, and there's a few different flavors of that available in the marketplace. Some are like these kind of much more niche specific, lower volume, high quality type sources. And then some are like we would say with Bombora, this really nice blend of quality and scale. And then you've got these like kind of big bulky sources. So yeah, it's kind of like different paths there in the third party space. But to get to the second part of your question, more and more, and especially with AI, we're going to see more elegant ways to mix these signals together into one holistic synthesized prescription for end users. So that will go beyond intent data, of course, into technographics, ICP, firmographic, et cetera. But yeah, more than ever, these things are getting combined together.
Yeah. Yeah. So Mike, you touched on the first party and a third party. I want to make sure that the audience get it. Is there a second party also? First party is anybody coming on your website or your CRM
Yeah.
data. Third party is, perfect example of Bombora providing, hey, here are the audiences or here are the accounts that are showing interest in what you provide in terms of services and products. Is it a second party as well?
Yeah. Some of this is how we joke around about it. Semantics,
Yeah.
But yeah, there's ways that you could think about like, okay, I've already captured this person or I've captured this account, and I want that enriched with someone else's third party information, but it's mapped onto my first party data. So we're calling it second party. Another reasonable person could say, well, that's third party.
Yeah.
So some of it comes down to semantics, but certainly, especially in like kind of like the contact space, if, let's say a media company has the rights from a privacy perspective to pass along information about a known user, and I, as a marketer, have captured that known user, and I have the rights to kind of append some of that information, say John Doe at Boeing. A media company might know, like, hey, we know John Doe's really interested in hybrid cloud computing. Well, okay, we can kind of append that information on John Doe. So this would be an example of second party, probably.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a bit of that as well.
Yeah, I was talking to somebody, and their second party definition. I think first party and third party are pretty clear. Their second party definition was partner ecosystem, right? The data and the intent that you generate from your partners.
Okay, I'd have to know more. I mean, a lot of times it's like, I think some people think second party sounds better.
Yeah.
Oh, mine's second party, not third party. Third's
Yeah.
bad, second's better.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess like you could say ours is second party because we have direct relationships with these cooperative members of ours.
Yeah.
Like we run a co-op of media companies, and we're able to collect the data directly from their properties. We have a tag that sits on their site that allows us to collect consent. And so this ecosystem that we've built is in a lot of ways, like by someone's definition, a second party data ecosystem. But yeah, of it, ultimately, I think it doesn't matter. It's like, can you describe exactly how the data is being collected, where it's coming from, like that level of transparency? And then different people can kind of argue whether it's first, second, third, et cetera.
Right, yeah. So, Mike, you touched on something very important. There's a lot of noise in the market when it comes to intent data, right? A lot of vendors claim that they have it, and then there's whole bitstream data available now to so many different companies. Um, so the end customer is getting confused about, hey, which intent data should I use? We know, we've been partners for last 5 years. Bombora has the most premium intent data. Can you unpack why is that the case for our audience and why Bombora data performs so much more better for the advertisement use case as well as generating the funnel through your email, phone calls, as well as keeping your existing customers and expanding?
Yeah, I think it's two big things. One is like the raw material itself. So we went through this really hard work of creating this cooperative of B2B media companies and other constituents. So think of this on one end of the spectrum is large, think of it as more like business focused publications that most people know, right? Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg, Forbes, Business Insider, Fortune, Inc. and Fast Company, et cetera, et cetera. Like business focused websites. Then there's this, that's one end of the spectrum. And then it goes all the way down through this longer tail of B2B vertical publications, trade associations, lead gen companies, events companies, right? So if you then like put this all together, it becomes this really powerful proxy for the B2B internet. And that raw material is highly differentiated. Most of that ecosystem is exclusive to Bombora. So you just can't monitor companies doing research in most of these places. And these are like highly rich, they're watching videos, downloading case studies, downloading white papers, signing up for events for specific tracks. Like it's parts of the internet that are very difficult to monitor. You mentioned the bid stream. This would be this kind of exhaust that comes from the much, much broader part of the internet where advertising is being bought and sold in an automated fashion. So the exhaust from the bid stream allows you to get some of the raw materials we have, an IP address and an URL, so you can do some of the same things, but it's just missing a lot of the real like B2B content watering holes where a lot of the real research is taking place. So that's one thing is like the raw materials. The second thing is just as important is because we have this stable ecosystem, think of it as like a controlled walled garden of the B2B internet. It allows us to be really good at understanding normal behavior. So if we are monitoring, I always use the example of Boeing. If we're monitoring Boeing as an organization and what they're interested in normally, we can be very good at seeing a spike because we have this stable ecosystem that we control. We understand the contents of that ecosystem. It's not a moving target. These bulkier sources, you don't know what's going to be in the bid stream on a given day. You might get 10% of one business site one day, 0% the next, 30% the next. You don't have a stable, steady state. So it's almost impossible to understand normal behavior. You might understand that Boeing had a bunch of interactions on a topic, but that might just be because you got access to a new part of the Wall Street Journal that day
Mhm.
that covered some cloud computing topic. You just don't know. So between like our ability to like stable ecosystem that allows us to model really effectively and like the really rich raw material that kind of feeds the system, it does give us an edge on quality. Like this is, and it should, it's all we do. It's a main part of our business. We should be really, really good at it compared to a lot of other vendors who kind of do it on the side. But those are to demystify it, those are really the two reasons why, we're have that
The
quality.
consistency of the raw material and the quality of the raw material, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we see it, Mike, we see it in our customer base. Our recipe that we give to our customers is, look, whether you adopt AI today or not, you still need high quality data. So the first thing we do is ensure that their existing data is clean, complete, up to date, right? Their go-to-market team is going to be just that much more efficient. And then we run our AI models on their ICP to make sure that the limited dollars that we all have, and we want our dollars to go a long way, that we do the ICP analysis and we give them crystal clear account scoring to say, look, we have 40 million companies. You can come and take random 10,000 or the 10,000 that you think are important, or make a data-driven decision and run this ICP analysis on your tool, on your data set, bring your close won, close lost, and we'll show you what are the characteristics, right? And primarily people are used to seeing just firmographic and technographic, right? We have it. We have better firmographic and technographic data than anybody in the industry. But these AI tools are going beyond the firmographic and technographic data to look at the 60 different elements to show them who their true ICP is. And when they layer in Bombora intent data and the other signals, you see that in the results, like the efficiency of data
Yeah.
is that much more.
And
Mike, there's a component of privacy and compliance as well, right? When you secure data, um, that's not somebody else's. Like we are seeing LinkedIn shutting down, a couple of companies for those companies to go and scrape contact data, right? In a similar way, some of the larger enterprises, they run away from companies that are just using the bitstream data set, right? So talk to me about how Bombora ensures that their customers are getting compliance and privacy, enabled data.
yeah, with intent data specifically, there's two kind of like points of consent. One is content has been created and someone created and owned the content itself. That's the publisher. So does the publisher understand how data like around who's consuming that content is being used? Right. So that'd be number one. We cover that because we're in a relationship with the publisher. They join our cooperative, there's a value exchange, we have a contract, they get value, we get value. That's step one. Step two is the end user. So the end user has consumed that piece of content. Do they understand kind of like what's happening with that behavioral interaction? And there we're covered through the consent string by having the relationship with the publisher. So when you go to the Wall Street Journal or any publisher nowadays, you're going to see like a pop-up that asks you to opt into the privacy policy of that publisher. And if you do that and you're actually curious enough to go into what it means, you'd find Bombora if it's a publisher that's in our co-op. So that allows us to put a consent flag on that particular anonymous user. We still don't know who they are. We know they're just an anonymous identifier to us.
Yeah.
But that anonymous identifier has a consent flag that said, okay, we have their permission. We know we have the publisher's permission. And so like the data that we're able to manufacture from that becomes, highly durable. Like kind of no matter which way the wind blows from a privacy and regulation perspective, when you have that relationship with the publisher and the end user, you're in a good position. And so there's some data sets, not just in the intent data space, but in just in general, they don't have either of those two things. Like a publisher might not understand that they have this kind of like data leaking. They might understand that it's leaking out for one use case, but it's actually being used for two other use cases. They don't really understand that. They don't have transparency around it. And then certainly the end user, at times like data can be mined without the end user's permission as well.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, we sleep well every night, knowing and also giving that assurance to our customers that look, we are compliant, right? And the data that we bring in from our partner ecosystem is also compliant. So, Mike, let's switch the gears. Success in go-to-market is not a one-trick pony, right? A lot of things have to come together for revenue teams to hit the numbers, hit their targets. And there are, when you and I were chatting last week, you mentioned these are recipes. I would love for you to unpack and share some recipes with our audience.
Yeah, we talk about that with our customers a lot, because we have a data set that gets applied across all of sales and marketing. It can be overwhelming to say like, okay, how do you start to serve these different constituencies who have different goals and kind of like different roles in a go-to-market organization? And so we talk a lot about like first things first, identifying data recipes that get you into deals you wouldn't have had otherwise.
Mhm.
And these recipes might be different for all different customers, right? For one, it might be okay, you have a really good ICP, like you have a really good understanding of the types of companies that ultimately end up buying from you. You might find out through trial and error that you tend to have more success with companies that have come to your website, let's say in the last 60 days. You know they know who you are. Maybe you have a great website with great content that positions you well. So that's part of your data recipe. You know, you might find a third-party intent data source like us that is highly correlative to deals that you get into. Technographics is another big one. You know, hey, we do really well with customers of Salesforce,
Yeah.
or we do really well when we're taking out competitor XYZ. So it's not about like, hey, try these three things. It's about kind of like as a starting point to a go-to-market, can you articulate across sales and marketing, hey, here's at least one, maybe two data recipes that we do well. When these four things come together, we do well. And can you get different constituents in your go-to-market organization to agree that
Yeah.
that's true?
Yeah. Yeah.
And usually, yeah,
Yeah. One of the question that I get from our customers all the time is we provide them website visitor intel. We call it visitor intel. Hey, who came to your website?
yeah,
We de-anonymize at the company level, and customers love that, right? But the challenge is there's not enough, right? There's not enough traffic
sure.
that comes to their website, and the trend is actually going down with all the LLMs. More and more information is being consumed in a summary format versus people going and clicking on the blue link, right?
Yeah.
In that world, what we have been advising our customers are is like, clean out your data, get your ICP in place, and then use signals and put the ads in front of your ICP so they are aware of your brand and drive the traffic. You mentioned big part of your business is audience. Can you unpack it? Is that correlation that I'm making in my mind, the third party intent is going to help you increase your first party intent through the audience solution?
Yeah, yeah, certainly could. And so yeah, like from a high level, because of this cooperative that I described, we have this large digital footprint, and think of this as just a bunch of anonymous identifiers to which we can tie these rich B2B attributes. So if an advertiser through many different advertising platforms that we work with wants to target a list of accounts, we can create a digital audience that's addressable that allows them to show ads to that list to that audience. So we don't own an advertising platform. We don't have a DSP or an advertising module, but we provide the audiences into these platforms that power that advertising. And certainly, yeah, like that round trip, like kind of like round trip ticket of I had these accounts I wanted to reach. I engage them with advertising. That drove traffic back to my site. That site traffic can become a signal that kind of like flows into these lower funnel use cases. That's something that we see, a lot of for sure.
Yeah. So, Mike, we do have a module that we provide to our customers. We call it Ads Intel. So our customers can use the intent data that they have available within our platform to put the ads in front of them, or is there a separate mechanism through which they will have a better efficiency of those ads?
Yeah, so you're saying in your platform, like a customer can launch an ad campaign today?
That's correct. And
Oh,
we
cool.
tell them, look, pick signals or pick your intent, right? Companies that are already showing intent, put ads in front of them.
Got it. Yeah, no, that we see that a lot. A lot of times with our audience business, customers have an account list. Will good percentage of the time will they'll kind of like filter that list using our intent data. But what's like what we're seeing is that this idea of awareness and branding and like reaching your not your entire ICP, but at least a large set of key accounts that you know you want to sell to, we have seen a marked increase in this idea of like, I want to reach all of them. I want to get in front of them. I understand the value in them knowing who I am before they go into a buying process. So a lot of times with our audience business, like intent data is like a big chunk of it, but a lot of times they just want to target a set of accounts. And they're not necessarily just focused on a lower funnel or mid funnel play where they want to target those accounts only that have intent because they're starting to recognize, I'd say in kind of a new and refreshing way that, they need to build a relationship with brands before they're in a research cycle.
Right, right, right. And just to add to that, within the account list, add the buying centers so that your ads are being seen across the
100%.
organization. Because as we all know, um, B2B decisions are made by what now, 8, 9, 10 decision makers within the companies, right?
Yeah,
Um,
100%.
yeah. So, speaking of recipes, Mike, our customers always come and say, look, we purchase SalesIntel, we need some best practices. And our three-step approach for them is, you know, make sure the data is clean, get your ICP in place, and then we have 40 different sets of signals, right? Some of them we have agentized it, means we have put the agentic workflow, and the others are still, coming in the form of news mentions, right? We tell them, try with a handful of those and see what works for you. Put ads in front of them, use SalesIntel, or if you have LinkedIn account, put ads on LinkedIn, and then drive that traffic back to your website. We'll de-anonymize it. Now you know that this account, this prospect already knows about your brand, right? They already know about your brand, and then give it to the BDRs because otherwise BDR is going to send emails to thousands of accounts without seeing much of a result. So that recipe is working fine. And our customers, we see in this 40 or so signals that we provide them, the handful of those signals work well. So, those signals are job changes, for certain companies that have product that is being used by multiple folks, right? They find success in finding who changed jobs, who are my champions that are going from one company to the other. And for others, it's the website visits, right? And for some others, we see technology changes. Anytime you see a company has a certain type of technology, they're more likely to buy your technology because you have deeper integrations with them.
Yep. And do you guys tend to find that trial and error and understanding kind of what data recipes are getting them into deals, do you find that experimentation tends to happen at the SDR, BDR level, or is it more at the advertising marketing level, and then that intelligence kind of trickles down to sales?
Yeah, great question, Mike. It depends upon the size of the organization and who owns pipeline, who owns demand generation. We see some cases in smaller organizations, CROs and CMOs, they own the pipeline number and they are in our tools working with our CSO organizations to figure out which signals work best for them. And in the upper mid market and larger, you see, demand gen. Sometimes it falls under marketing, sometimes under revenue leader or a sales leader. They are the ones who are experimenting,
Mm.
and we are
One
seeing.
of the other data points like that we're seeing as, additive to these recipes is media exposure data.
Mhm.
So let's say you've got, a set of 1,000 accounts and you're running ads against those 1,000 accounts. Certainly some percentage are going to make it back to your website, and that's kind of like tried and true. Like that's going to make a recipe that ultimately turns into an SDR, BDR action. But there's a big chunk of those accounts that may have seen a lot of those ads. They were exposed to a lot of your ads, but maybe they didn't click on the ads. But maybe they check a bunch of other boxes, like they have some intent, according to Bombora. They really good fit from an ICP perspective, really good fit from a technographic perspective. What we're finding is then using that media exposure data as another way to accelerate that action against that account. Not only does it work, meaning like, oh, you had air cover against this account, they're more likely to know who you are, they're more likely to engage with you. It also ties advertising and sales together in this really cool way, where before you'd run ads and try to justify that they worked. But
Yes.
in this model, if the media exposure is actually part of the sales recipe, it automatically worked because you're using who you've reached to decide who to like call or who to email from an SDR BDR level. So like you're almost like symbiotic by definition. Again, assuming the data recipe proves fruitful and that like the SDR BDR motion is getting you into deals, and part of that recipe is actually the media exposure data, the attribution from an advertising perspective is kind of built into that exercise, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Mike, how many times a prospect has to see your brand to register that, yep, I know who Bombora is, or hope I know who SalesIntel is?
Good question. If I could answer that, that would be data you could really sell.
That you
Uh,
can say.
yeah, yeah. I don't know how to answer that. I really don't. It probably varies greatly. Like there's big companies, just everybody knows.
Yep. Yep.
But you do hear a lot of our biggest customers, big global technology companies, they'll be like, most people, like, this is a big part of our business. Most people don't know we do it, right? Like, big global tech company decides to get into the cloud space. And maybe they've been there forever, but if you ask a, normal buyer, they'd be like, think of them as an apps company. Don't even know that they're in cloud. So for like big company where it's about expanding offerings, it's less about do they know who you are? It's more, do they know that I do this new thing? So it's at all levels that it's a challenge.
Yeah. Great. I see some of the questions from our audience. Why don't we take a few questions? And all right, if you had to launch one AI plus intent play tomorrow, what's the move you would start with?
What was the question? Sorry.
So the question is, if you had to launch one AI plus intent play tomorrow, what's the move you would start with?
Good question. I think I really like when it comes to if it's going to involve AI, like I really like to bring in this notion of account intelligence.
Hmm.
So we think about a sales use case for intent data on this spectrum. One is prioritization, SDR, BDR. I have 1,000 accounts. Tell me the 50 to prioritize. Much simpler. Account intelligence is kind of the opposite. Let's say you're a strategic account manager and you only manage 5 accounts. So you do not need intent data to tell you what accounts you should care about. You wake up every day and you only care about 5 accounts.
Five comes.
But you could use intent data, and this is where AI can make it go faster, better, to tell you the most strategic way to engage those accounts. Right. So getting to a point where you can say, okay, I manage Disney and hey, look at all the intent topics that they've been consuming over the last 6 months and marry that with all of their filings and marry that with all of their news and marry that with all of the other information on the internet about Disney, put it all together and synthesize it. Now tell me what matters to Disney right now. And how does that reflect against my product portfolio? So that's where I get excited about AI is like synthesis. How do I get from a bunch of data to a prescription? And I think one of the places that that's most needed right now is in account intelligence.
Yeah, which
Like,
wasn't available until now, right? You had to go do a bunch of research and synthesize this data. Now LLMs are able to synthesize all
yes.
this data.
Yeah. So that's one I would start playing with sooner than later. Prioritization, it's useful and it can help you go faster, could probably help you write the email, help you marry the right contacts. Like there's really good utility there. But it's maybe a less complicated problem to solve.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Let me see here, a bunch of questions. There's you guys talked about AI. Have you seen any agentic workflow success? So I can take that agentic workflow. So first of all, let's define what is agentic workflow. AI does a couple of things. one, we all are familiar with using a chat GPT experience, right? Instead of clicking on a bunch of links, synthesizing data and content, now AI can synthesize the content and you can have a natural language interaction. The second use case of AI is what's called agentic workflow, is where AI detects something. Let's just take an example of signals, right? We have 40 or so different signals in available for our customers. You can define your agentic workflow where you can say, if this happens, let's take an example. If somebody comes to my website, that's a signal. Then second is qualify them. Okay, is this somebody my ICP is within my ICP or not? And if they are, then do one more check. Are they in my CRM system already? Right? And then make an action, put it in my CRM if they're not, and also send them in outreach cadence, right? So
Yeah.
that whole workflow, which used to take days and sometimes weeks, now it's all automated. We have some agentic workflows that are available outside the box, right? You come in, like the one which I mentioned, we have intent workflow. You can monitor some of the topics and see which companies are surging. If they're in ICP, just go send them, to a BDR to make a phone call or put them in the cadence. And other workflows, we are actually working where anybody can design workflow, using our products. So more to come on that in the next month or two updates. Let's see what other questions. I have been using technographic for a while without much success. What am I missing? All right, so look, I can take this question again. Technographic, there is a lot of data available in the market, right? Good and bad. So the key is to figure out which data to use. In terms of technographic, there are very many players out there. Majority of these technographic vendors, the data that they provide you or the data that is easily available on somebody's website, right? We call them public technographic data. What they're missing is the key data which is behind the firewall. And very few companies have this high quality behind the firewall data, and it's not easy to get, extremely expensive. We have seen huge success in our customer base that use this differentiated high quality behind the firewall data. One of the example is one of our customers, a very large Salesforce implementer, right? Service provider, and their ad dollars were not yielding much of a result. But when they had access to not only who is using Salesforce, but who's using other products that go along with Salesforce that are behind the firewall, all of a sudden they saw their same ad dollars were performing at 3.2x better. The same BDR campaigns were now that much more effective because they had this intelligence. So yes, technographic data works. The key is to get the quality data.
Yeah. I'd say also like a couple other things. One is it being used in combination with anything else? Like any of these data points all by themselves, like, okay, you're using technographic data all by itself, but maybe those accounts you're reaching out to don't have any intent, or they're not in your ICP otherwise, right? Like they've installed the right thing, but maybe they're the wrong size or the wrong industry or whatever. So like, that's question one, is like, are you using them in combination with a bunch of other things? And then two is just the measurement. Sometimes we've seen with intent in particular is like, are we measuring it at scale?
Yeah.
Like if you were like, hey, I reached out to 10 accounts, like sometimes we'll get this. I reached out to 10 of these accounts, but four of them, like they were already too far along in their buying journey. And when I hear that, I'm like, wow, 4 out of 10 are buying something.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Like I think that's really good. But when you're measuring it at that scale, a customer might be like, well, I don't think that's good. Wanted to get a deal out of it. So, but like, are you measuring it over like, hey, if you took 100 shots at the basket, did your free throw percentage go up by 30%? That would be a great outcome, as opposed to like, did you make every single shot?
Yeah. Yeah.
So just like
Expectation setup.
keeping that in mind. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. Expectation setup. We do it during our sales process, during our onboarding process. That look, any of these signals, they're not MQLs, right? Even when you tell them, the sellers at the ground, they sometimes feel this is SQLs, right? They're not even MQLs. They're giving you direction. You're much better off using these signals and working on them versus without having any signals with this intent and others.
Yeah, and that's where I feel like the larger companies have figured out and kind of like they get to enjoy some escape velocity as a result of that. Like they have these big data teams. They figured out it's like, hey, this moves our conversion percentage by 4%. Do it. Whereas a smaller company with less resources, like they really scrutinize and they don't measure things at scale as well. And so they can miss a lot of opportunities because they're almost like looking at it too closely, if that makes sense. It's like think about the whatever results you see, picture that at scale across thousands and thousands and thousands of at bats, and then ask yourself if it's worth it. Versus like measuring the results of, one or two accounts at a time.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. Thanks, Mike. I'll take one more question here. Visitor intel is awesome. However, how do you use it? I get an IP address, not a person. So someone is looking for sales manager training, which is what we do. Where do I start to email or call? Great question, Jeff. We touched on privacy and compliance. SalesIntel, we are not a fly-by-night shop, nor is Bombora. We are not going to do anything that compromises the privacy of our users or break any compliance or any law, right? Person-based website visitor at scale with compliance is not yet available. So how do you overcome that? Once you know which company is visiting your website, you know within that company what's the buying center, right? And we give you that buying center, and our recommendation is reach out to the buying center, whether through ads first or through email first, right? So that's a um, uh, uh, recommendation that we have for most of the customers. Well, we are at time. Thank you everyone for joining in. I know there's some few more questions regarding, does intent work for SaaS companies or it works for SaaS companies? Does it work for IT services companies? There are a few other questions around the signals. So how about we compile these questions and write the responses and send them to our audience. But thank you so much, Mike, for joining me. This was fun. Hopefully our audience got some nuggets out of it.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Appreciate it.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys. Have a good day.